Okay, so I wanted to say hi to everybody first. My name's George, and I'm the instructional designer and online educator here at Voicethread. What I want to do today is take you through the basics of Voicethread, show you how everything works in Canvas, and show you a variety of examples along the way. So keep in mind, there's always a mix of people from different, courses and departments. The examples that I show you today, I want you to think of more as templates than, even if it doesn't fit exactly what your subject area is, they're types of voice threads that you can create. So I'll go through all of that stuff with you. I will stop for questions at various points. You can always feel free to put them in the chat. I do check over there from time to time throughout the session. All right, so before we dive into the fun stuff, I just want to show you some resources that are available on the Voicethread homepage. And this is actually the first link that I'm going to show you how to add into Canvas, a link to your Voicethread homepage. Once you are able to create one and you go there to check it out, you'll see that you have tutorials available, and your students will as well. And they're all available through that 3-bar menu. This is where you can filter your homepage view. So by default, you'll be on all, which means you can see all of the voice threads you have access to, but you can filter to just see the tutorials. So I always recommend checking those out. They're short and sweet, and directing your students to click on a homepage link in your course and then go check those out as well. In the bottom right is the blue Help tab, and that's where you can find the written instructions to everything. So if you wanted to look up something for Canvas, you can just type Canvas in the search bar and search for our Canvas pages. You can click on any of these to get any written instructions to anything you need. Below that is the About menu. So if the Help tab does not help you and you need some extra guidance, you can always contact our support team and they can help you troubleshoot or walk you through whatever you need. There's also the research page available through that menu and the blog, so you can check that stuff out as well. Next to that is the training menu, where you can access our free workshops, and we will be offering more in July and August and September. Every month we have at least 3 workshops, so you're welcome to sign up for as many of those as you like. All right, the final thing I want to show you on the homepage is on the left-hand side, you can see the course groups. So these groups are automatically created as soon as you configure any links in your course in Canvas, any VoiceThread links. And there's a few other things that happen as well. So I'm going to get into all of that in just a minute, but before I do that, I want to show you what a VoiceThread is so you can see what one looks like, and we'll spend a little more time on this in just a minute. But this is the basic structure of any VoiceThread, regardless of how you're using it, whether it's for assessment, for discussion, for lecture delivery, for announcements, whatever types of things you do in your class, you can do on VoiceThread, and they all look the same way, essentially. So what you'll see is that there's a slide in the middle, and this happens to be a webcam video slide, but this could be any number of things, and they'll all play like a slideshow. So I could have a webcam video, a PowerPoint, a YouTube video, some images, and each one of those pieces of media will have its own slide, and you'll just be able to navigate through just like you would through a PowerPoint presentation or a keynote presentation like that. So it's a multimedia slideshow. The big difference between that and just a simple tool like PowerPoint is that you have your discussion. So on the left-hand side, you can see the conversation channel. And this is where all the discussion and back and forth takes place between you and your students. So these are the 2 elements, whatever is the central media on your slide and whatever's happening in the conversation channel. All right, so now that you can see it, I want to give you a couple of definitions for what a VoiceThread is. It's not easy to define VoiceThread in kind of a simple, like 3-word definition. I know some tools are super easy, like this checks your paper for plagiarism, or this lets you text your whole class at once. But VoiceThread is a versatile tool. It can do a lot of different things. So the definitions that I use, one's a technical definition and one's more practical. The technical definition is that VoiceThread is an asynchronous multimedia slideshow that allows you to have a discussion around each slide. From a more conceptual standpoint, I always describe VoiceThread as a virtual classroom space. So whatever you do in a face-to-face class, you can do on VoiceThread. All right, all you need to do is create something that has these two elements, a slide of some kind and comments. So I'm going to take you through that now, and then we'll dive into the Canva stuff. All right, so from my homepage, I can create a VoiceThread by clicking on the Create tab up top. And this is one of the other reasons I recommend adding a homepage link to your course, because it makes creation less stressful. You can create a VoiceThread kind of on the fly. If you're a student and you access an assignment link, you can create the whole presentation and submit it in one shot. But as we know, if you do something kind of one time through, you're probably not going to put your best work forward. So just like with anything, when it comes to paper writing or anything that you're practicing, creating it over time and iterating is the better idea. So I'm going to go to create this VoiceThread, and I'm going to add those two elements. First, I'm going to add my media, and then I'm going to comment. Those are the only two steps you need. So I click Add Media, and you'll see there are a number of ways to bring media into this multimedia slideshow. I'm going to go through my computer in a minute, but before I do that, I just want to show you what else is available here. So the second one down is Media Sources. And if I click on Media Sources, you'll see that there are a number of ways to bring stuff right into my VoiceThread. I can bring in slides and or comments from other VoiceThreads I've already created. I can bring in videos from Khan Academy, images from Flickr's Creative Commons licensed image database. I can connect my Google account to my VoiceThread account and import any content from my Google Drive. We also have the New York Public Library's public domain database of images. And if you have a Kaltura license, we can connect you to them so you can bring those videos in and make them interactive class modules. These two in the middle, I wouldn't worry too much about. The audio recording is for an audio-only slide. So that's primarily used by podcasters. The webcam photo is basically a selfie slide. So some people may use that for introductions. More frequently, you'll see people use the webcam video. And I'm going to show you some examples of instructors who do that. And then finally, there's the URL option. So if I want to bring a YouTube video into this slideshow, I can click URL, paste the YouTube link, and click Save, and it will import that YouTube video right into my VoiceThread as a video slide. All right, but like I said, I'm going to go through my computer. So if I click my computer, I can go through any of my files here to create a lecture, a discussion, whatever I want. So let's say I am a math teacher, and I'm going to create a math lesson. I'm going to maybe make a review, something like that. I'm going to find the files that I want to bring in, and these could be any type of file, remember, video, document, PowerPoint, whatever. And they're going to start to upload and process. And now I'm going to call this, let's call this Math 340, Week 1 lesson. And then I could add a description. I could enter tags. I could just go and click Save and move right on to step 2 if I want to. But for right now, I just want to show you what's behind this second tab here while we're on the screen. So this is where you can access the playback options. And you can always access these at any point. After you've started creating the VoiceThread, you can always go back to edit it and change the playback options. After you've shared this in Canvas, and even if your students have started to interact with it, you can always go back in and change any of these that you want to. So it's not set in stone. But let me show you what's here. There's a number of ways to customize the commenting, and I'm just going to point to 2 of them for right now. The allowed comment methods, when we go to our next step, you'll see there are 5 of them. If I don't want my students to have access to all 5, I can remove the ones that I don't want them to use. So maybe I want them to only use the webcam. Maybe the subject I teach requires them to do something physically. I need to see a demonstration. It could be dance, it could be sign language, it could be playing the clarinet, whatever it is, but I have to see them in order to evaluate them. So I'm not going to give them the option to use text or any of these other options. I'm just going to leave the webcam for them. And if I click Save, that's the only one they'll see when they go to comment. So I'm going to leave them all checked for now, just so we can see them on the next step. But there's one more that I want to draw your eye to, and that is comment moderation. So this is a big feature for assessment purposes. There are some other use cases as well. But what this does, if I check this box and click Save, then all of the comments that come into my VoiceThread will be hidden. I can still see them as the instructor, but the students can't see and hear each other's. So this is not a setting that you want to use for discussions, but this is very valuable if you are creating some type of assessment where you're asking students a question and you don't want the students who come in later to simply listen to what their classmates have already answered and copy their answer. So if you turn on comment moderation, as far as the student knows, it's really just a one-on-one with you on the VoiceThread, because they'll see your comments and you'll see their comments, but they won't see anyone else. As the instructor, you can see everything though. So when I show you how to add the assignment links in Canvas, one of the assignments is basically like a quiz template, and there is a way to turn that on, turn on comment moderation as you're adding that link. So just make a mental note of that. I will show you that in just a little while. But for now, I want to keep all of this as default. Also, all I've done so far is just upload these 2 slides and give it a title. All right. Now I click save, and I can go in to add more if I want to. I could go back into my computer. I could record a webcam intro, whatever I want. I could add more to this. And I can also rearrange the order of the slides just by dragging and dropping them. Now, let's say I'm happy with this the way it is though, and I'm ready to start creating my lesson. I have my slides. I only need one more step, and that's to start explaining stuff to my students. So I click on comment. It's going to open the VoiceThread up in the media player. So now the slide takes up a lot more space on the screen. And if I want to dive into a lesson about Markov blankets, I can do that now. So to do that, I click on the plus sign, and I see my 5 commenting options. So these are the same 5 I showed you that you can remove if you want to, remove access to, but I kept all 5 checked so we can see all 5. There's text, telephone, audio, webcam, and file upload. So let's say I want to leave an audio comment on this slide. I click on the microphone, and now I also see this pencil icon that shows up. So I can choose different colors and decide if I want it to fade or not. I'm going to go with red fading for now, and this is what we call the Doodle Tool. So this is one of the tutorials that's on your homepage. But let's say I want to start getting into it with my students. So I start explaining to them that this node is separated from this node by these 2, and whatever it is I need to explain to them as I work through it. I can change colors as I go and say node 7 is different because it is connected to node 5, blah, 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 right? So I can explain my lecture, get into it, explain everything, ask them if they have questions. When I'm done, I click stop recording. It'll process my comment and play it back for me, and then I can choose to cancel, save, or record more. Microphone. And now I also see this pencil icon that shows up. All right, so the audio quality sounds good. I click save, and my comment goes over into the conversation channel with my identity image there. All right, now I can use my navigation arrows in the bottom right to go to my second slide, and I can record whatever it is I have to say here about Mandelbrot sets. So I click on the plus sign, I choose the microphone option again, and let me switch this up. I'm gonna go with a brighter color, but I might start to talk to my students about tending towards infinity or whatever it is that I want to explain to them. I can annotate throughout the slide, talk about this over here, talk about how important that is, etc. And then when I'm done, I click stop recording. Once again, it'll process and play back, and I can cancel, save, or record more. Microphone option again. And let me switch this up. I'm going to go with a brighter color, but I might start to talk to my students about, all right, so you can see how the doodle syncs up with what I'm saying. I click save, and my comment on slide 2 appears in the conversation channel for slide 2. All right, so that's how to create a voice thread. Before we move on to Canvas, does anybody have any questions about the creation process? I'm more than happy to go over any of it that didn't quite make sense the first time. Just let me know. You can always unmute your mic and ask, or put a question in the chat if you do have a question.
Excuse me, do the student need to have an account to do all that with you?
They do have an account. They just need to click on a link to access it. And I'll show you that, all that stuff next, adding the links in Canvas. All right, a question from Barbara. How much recording space or time do we have? So the only real limit you need to worry about is there's a 3 GB limit for any individual file upload. I don't think anyone has ever hit that. 3 GB is a pretty big file. So you'd have to upload like a full-length movie to have that cause a problem. But I upload hour-long screencasts all the time, and it's nowhere close. The other thing to think about is there's a 60-minute time limit on comments. So hopefully that's another one you never have to worry about. The only reason we have that limit there is just so in case someone starts recording and they walk away from their computer for the weekend, they don't put 72 hours of audio files on our servers and crash the website. So it's just a 60-minute limit that you get cut off. But I usually recommend trying to keep any individual comment to between 1 and 2 minutes, just for listening purposes. But obviously, you're free to talk right up into the 60-minute mark if you want to.
The other thing is can you, do you have to stop at each slide, or can you create a seamless, like?
That's a great question. You don't have to stop at the slide, but I would recommend it for a few reasons. There is a way to comment, and we call it M5 commenting, just in case you're curious. But if I start to record a comment on slide 1, let's say I'm going to make an audio comment. I start to record my comment. I still see the navigation arrows in the bottom right. So I can talk for a couple of minutes on this slide and then navigate to the next slide, talk for a few minutes here, and keep going. The problems that happen there, though, are that for your typical kind of class lecture, that's the equivalent on Voicethread of walking into a classroom, talking for 45 minutes straight, and then leaving the classroom, right? So typically you would talk for a few minutes, and as you're talking in a face-to-face environment, you see a couple of students that have a question, just like you had a question right now, right? So you always want to have a pause to allow for some questions, some interaction, things like that. It makes it easier for the students to digest. But the other big reason, and this is more of a practical teacher-centric reason, is that if you start to record a 20-minute presentation in one shot, the odds of you getting through it without any kind of stumbles or mistakes are not great. Unless you're a professional newscaster who's used to kind of, flowing like that. For me, I can record a 2-minute comment and have it sound pretty good. But once I get into 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, at some point, I'm going to lose my train of thought. My phone's going to start pinging me. A dog is going to start barking. Something's going to happen, and it's going to ruin it. So you don't want to have to go back and re-record 25 minutes. Re-recording 1 minute, not a problem. 25 minutes could be frustrating. So those are some of the reasons. But yes, you can, and I have seen it done very effectively for compare and contrast type of things. So for art or graphic design, or if you're looking at maps over time for a history course, something like that, you can go back and forth and say, do you notice how the polar ice caps look in this year compared to this year? Things like that. So they're good for compare and contrasting of visuals, but I would recommend being cautious with that.
And sorry, George, but when you grade it, can you that scrubber down there, if you roll that forward, does that, if you scroll that forward, is it going to switch to the second page?
No, it'll stop at the end.
You didn't save it. So, yeah, so I was just going to say, because when I had students, I didn't ask them how to do their presentation or tell them exactly in terms of recording, like record each slide separately. It got challenging when it was a 12-slide presentation and trying to grade all that, and find it again when I'd stop it, and I really was trying to jump from point to point that I had, included in my rubrics. So
yeah, for
something else to think about too.
It's something you can do, and it's something that does work effectively in certain scenarios, but just exercise some caution if you're going to try it. All right, but I don't see any other questions right now, so let's get into some Canvas stuff. All right, so there are 6 different types of links that you can add. I'm just going to bring this slide over for a few seconds to show you as an overview. 3 of the types of links are non-graded links, and 3 of them are graded. So the non-graded links would be the home page, which is the first one I'm going to show you in just a second. The course view, which takes you right into that whole class group that I mentioned that you can find on the left side of your home page. And then there's the individual VoiceThread. This is the kind that you would use when you want to share a specific VoiceThread at a certain point in a module in a week, but it doesn't have a grade. It's like a lecture or an announcement, something like that. Then there are the 3 graded types, and we'll get to all of these today. I just want to give you a general overview here, but let's dive into the first one, the home page. So if I'm in modules, I just come over here to the plus sign and click on the plus sign. Then I have to choose what type of link do I want this to be. It's going to be a link to an external tool. So I click external tool. It loads a list of all of my tools, and I can see VoiceThread in the list. So I click on it to select it. And now it's going to load my configuration menu. Now, unfortunately, Canvas gives us kind of a small window. You can still click all the buttons, but I usually like to stretch it out a little bit. You can grab the corner and stretch. But you can see the 3 non-graded types that I told you about, the home page, the course view, the individual VoiceThread, and then the 3 graded ones are tucked away behind the assignment builder. So if I want this to be a home page link, I can just click this button. Before I do that, I just want to distinguish the difference between these 2, because people, especially if you're brand new to VoiceThread and you add one of each into your course, at first glance, you might not notice the difference, because they're essentially just pages with thumbnails of VoiceThreads on them. The difference being that the home page shows you everything on your home page, everything in your account. So you can get to the tutorials, you can get to the help documentation, you can get to the contact page, you can create your VoiceThreads over time and edit them and all that good stuff. The course view just shows you the VoiceThreads that are shared with this one course. So it's a very filtered view. So like I said, I always recommend the homepage link. You don't need to do it, but because of those reasons, I do recommend it. So what I'm going to do now to make this a homepage link is click VT Home. And now all I have to do is give this link a name. So how's this going to look in the course module? So I'm going to call this VT Home. I click Save. Then I have to save and continue. All right, and now I can click Add Item just like I can with other module stuff in Canvas. So that puts it in the course. There it is. All right, now when a student comes into the course, they click on the link. It's going to create their account automatically. They don't need to sign up for anything. They just click on the link. If they've never used VoiceThread, it will create their account. If they already have an account, it will sign them into their account. It will add them into that group as a member, and it will load their VoiceThread homepage. So they can see the tutorials. They can go in to click to play any of these.
To create a new VoiceThread, you just go to the top of the page and click on Create. And building your VoiceThread starts with adding your media.
All right, so then they can X out, go to the next one, etc. They can click on the Help tab for those written instructions, or if you've given them an assignment to create VoiceThread, to create a VoiceThread, on Thursday, they can go in on Monday, see what the requirements are for the activity, and then they can go to their homepage and start to create their stuff over the course of the week. And once they're ready to share it, they can submit it through that assignment link, which I'll show you in just a minute. All right, so that's the homepage. Now, if I want to start adding my lectures, announcements, introductions, things like that, I go through the same process. I'm just going to make a different choice at the very end. So I click on the plus sign. I go to External Tool. I find VoiceThread in the list, and I select it. It's going to load my configuration menu. Once again, I can stretch this out to get a little more breathing room if I want to. And I'm going to see the same options that I just saw, except now I'm going to choose individual VoiceThread because I don't want them to click on a link to their homepage anymore. I already did that. I want them to click on a link to a specific VoiceThread that I want them to see. So maybe this is the first lesson of the week. So I click individual VoiceThread. It's going to load a list of all of my VoiceThreads from my homepage on the left-hand side of this window. I can see the one that I want to add. I select it. It loads it here in this panel. And then I just have to click Share with Class. Give it a title. Let's call it Lesson 1. I can save and continue, and then add item. All right, so that puts that link in the course. So now when a student goes to click on it, they click on that link for Lesson 1, and it's going to take them right to that VoiceThread. It's going to load it. And as far as the student's concerned, it's just like an embedded video on the page. So they can listen to whatever comments you have. They can navigate to the next slide. They can record any comments they have, whatever it is they want to do on that VoiceThread, they can do. All right, and I do see the question about the homepage link, Peggy. Yeah, so when a student clicks on the homepage link, it takes them into their account. So they would never have access to your account. It's just like, you know, email or something like that. So just because they have an email account doesn't mean they can see your emails. They could see their own. That's it. All right, and I do see a question about captions. Yeah, so closed captions are automatic, and I will show you that. Just give me a few seconds. I want to take you through a few examples, and one of them will have captions that are going to look and work just like yours. So if you can just sit tight for a couple of minutes, I will show you that very soon. But the first type of individual VoiceThread link I want to show you is a simple introduction. So this is the one that I mentioned at the beginning, where the instructor recorded just a one-slide VoiceThread. That's all there is to it. It's just a webcam recording. She could have added more, but she didn't need to. So I'm going to play this, and I just want you to note two things. Number one is that I'm screen sharing this through Zoom. So by the time my video gets to your screen, it's going to be a little choppy. So just be aware of the fact that's not how it actually looks on my screen. It's just because I'm screen sharing it. More importantly, focus on the nonverbal communication here. So imagine if this teacher had tried to do this as a text discussion board in her class. She's going to miss out on all of that nonverbal communication with the students, the facial expressions, the hand gestures, the body language, the tone of voice, the cadence, all of those things that are so important to communicating what you're trying to communicate to your students when you're giving some type of a dynamic presentation are completely absent when it comes to text. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to play a few seconds, but I think you'll see what I mean here.
Hi class, welcome to Tool 5, Technology for Kinesiology. I hope you have lots of experience in kines. Hope you have lots of experience in technology, but just in case you don't, by the time you finish with this class, you certainly will feel comfortable with technology in kinesiology. So the first thing we're going to do is participate.
All right, so I'm going to stop her there, but you can get a sense of who she is automatically just from a few seconds, right? So she's got that warmth, that presence. That's so important, especially in an online course. All right, now she goes on to tell her students, click on the plus sign and record your introductions as well. And that's exactly what they do.
Hi, my name is Andre, and I'm an exercise science major. I chose this major because I like the idea of keeping yourself healthy and active and finding new ways to do that through what you love to do.
All right, so I'm going to pause her there and just jump to the next one.
Hey guys, my name is Colin.
All right, but you can see each student has recorded their intro. I can always change the size of that comment bubble if I want to, and I can also grab it and move it around the screen in case it's blocking something. All right, so that's one type of VoiceThread that you might share using that individual VoiceThread link in Canvas. Something that's not graded, but where you want to have a discussion or make some announcements to your students. All right, here's another one. This one is not super exciting, but it is practical. This instructor uploaded his syllabus. So keep in mind, this is a template, right? It doesn't have to be just a syllabus. This could be any document. So any kind of announcements you have to make about internships in the fall or whatever it is that you need to share that would be like a handout in a face-to-face class, you can upload to VoiceThread and say whatever it is you need to say right here. There's one other feature I want to show you before I press play. Next to the play controls, there is a 1x. And if I click on this, I can change the speed of the comment. So for language learners, slowing down their instructor for a listening comprehension activity is great. Or if you happen to have a student that had a few too many Red Bulls and they're kind of going real fast, you can always slow them down as well. I'm going to speed him up to 1.35 just so you can see and hear what a sped up comment sounds like. And note that he's going to use that Doodle tool to annotate on the document as he works through.
Welcome to HSES 380, Sociology of Sport, for the summer of 2014. I'll be your instructor. We're going to go through this syllabus right here and talk about some of the more important parts of class for the introduction and what you can expect as we go along. Right up here is my contact info. I'm circling that for you right there. You can contact me at any point. You can email me. I'm accessible by email, and I will be so throughout the month.
All right, so I'm going to stop there, but if I scrub along, you'll see he goes on to continue to annotate throughout that document. All right, here's another one. This is a lecture. So in this case, the instructor uploaded a 16-slide PowerPoint. So you can see it is a 16-slide VoiceThread. And just as a pro tip, if you're going to upload PowerPoint or Keynote files, which is one of the most popular types of files to upload to VoiceThread, we always recommend exporting it as a PDF first and then uploading it to VoiceThread. The reason is because if you go outside of the default settings, meaning you expand your text box outside the recommended margins, or you have animations or transitions, you might notice some unusual formatting on the slide. So if you export as a PDF and then upload it, what you see in that PDF is exactly what you'll see on the slide. So that's what this instructor did, and you can see him.
Welcome to our VoiceThread on legal opinions. Legal opinions are not written primarily for the purpose of telling a lay audience a story about a case in the way that I typically do in class. The legal opinion itself, the case text, is written to teach a professional audience how the law will apply.
All right, so there's one type. Here's a math example where the instructor just uploaded blank white slides, and he used his Doodle Tool to annotate as he works through solving a problem.
Okay, so let's go over what we've just been talking about. Let's start with solving for exponential equations. For example, if I have 5 raised to the x plus 3 power equals 25, how do we solve a problem like this?
All right, so you can see he's going to go through and explain it just like he would if he were standing in front of the class with a dry erase board. Right, so those are a couple of direct instruction examples where the students don't need to comment. It's more just a lesson, and you can share that as an individual VoiceThread link. All right, and I do see the question about Google Slides. Yeah, so if you remember from the media sources, one of the options is to connect your Google account to your VoiceThread account. So you can bring your Google Slides right into VoiceThread through the media sources. And you won't have to worry about anything. It'll all look great. All right, here's the last type of individual VoiceThread link I want to show you. This is a discussion. And on this one, I'll show you what the captioning looks like as well. So the one thing you'll note here is that this looks the same as all the other examples. There's central media, there's a slide. In this case, it happens to be an image, and there are comments. And that's because the difference is what I'm saying. So instead of giving a lesson, I'm asking a question, and everyone else is going to join in to the discussion. So I'm going to start this off.
All right, so I'm going to leave a link to a blog post that we wrote right after this, and it's about shallow student comments that lead to kind of dead-end conversations.
All right, so now you can understand why that image was selected, but you also see the closed captions. So before I show you what the conversation channel looks like, let's take a little detour here. The captions happen automatically for you. You have them instant captions turned on. All you need to do is record an audio comment, a webcam comment, or upload any type of audio or web or video file as a slide, and it will be captioned within about 5 minutes. Then to go into edit it, you can click on the CC icon, and you can go to edit captions. So if I click edit captions, I can go in here, I can play the comment.
All right, so I'm going to leave a link to a blog post that we wrote right after this.
I could go in here to this text box and edit it if it got one of the words wrong, or there's some, punctuation that I need to correct or something like that. And then I can click save, and I'm all set. All right, so that is through that CC icon in the comment bubble itself. I can edit them through that edit captions button. All right, now, let's see, a few other things here. In the conversation channel, you can see a few different shapes of comment. And that's because some of these comments, the circular ones, are replies. They're what we call threaded replies. So in this conversation, all of the square identity images here are just normal standard comments where somebody comes into the VoiceThread, they click on the plus sign, and they record what they have to say. Now, let's say I get into this conversation a few hours after some of my classmates, and I'm listening to one of the comments way up at the top of the conversation channel, and I want to respond to her. If I just record my comment normally, it'll place it at the bottom, right? Because the most recent comment's on the bottom, the first comment is on top. But if I want to respond to, let's say, Stacy, she's way up at the top. So it wouldn't make sense to have my reply all the way down at the bottom. So what I can do is click on the arrow in her comment bubble and reply to her.
Hi there. Thank you so much for this topic.
All right, so I listened to what she said. I click on the arrow, and now I can record my reply. I can choose my commenting method, say what I want to say to Stacy, and you'll see that it has that circular identity image, and it's connected to hers. So that's how you make threaded replies. And you can see a variety of those going on throughout this conversation channel. Maria responding to Adarsh. He replied back by clicking on the arrow in her comment bubble and recording his response. And then Pamela heard what they had to say and she joined in. So this is how a discussion looks on VoiceThread. There is one other way to reply, and that is through a private reply. So let's say Barbara records a comment and maybe she missed the point of the activity, or she said something inappropriate that I want to address. I can click on the lock icon in her comment bubble and then record a private reply. So as you can see, it's a circle that's connected. So it is a thread, but it's a private thread. So only me and her can see what's happening here. So you can have that private response. So just like in a face-to-face classroom, if we're having a discussion and someone raises their hand and they make a statement that maybe is offensive to some of the other students or something else, I can call them up to my desk and whisper a critique and say, hey, look, Barbara, I know what you meant here, but you know, X, Y, Z. In VoiceThread, you just click on the lock icon and record your private reply. All right, so I do see a question from Rebecca. If you want to make a lecture but not have them comment, how do you accomplish it? So you don't all think of it like this. What happens in VoiceThread is the same stuff that happens in a classroom. So if you walk into a classroom and you're planning on giving a lecture, there are going to be opportunities where students raise their hand because they're not sure, right? So you always want to make sure they have some ability. Otherwise, they're going to email you, they're going to watch the lecture, and they're going to have to find some other way to contact you. So just treat VoiceThread the way you would treat a classroom. You walk in, you say, okay, today we're going to talk about X. If you said, today we're going to discuss X, and I want to hear from you, that's different than a lecture, right? So the students would be able to comment. You can actually turn off the ability. If you go into the sharing options, you can turn off the ability to have them comment. But, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, putting a pressure cooker, you know, the lid on a pressure cooker. If a student has a question, they're going to end up finding some way to contact you. So it might as well be in context, right? All right. So those are the individual VoiceThread types of links, things that you want that are not graded. Now let's get into the graded stuff. Then you can create these through modules or assignments. Either place works. So I'm going to go through modules for this one just to show you what it looks like. And then the next one I'll do through assignments just so we can see if there are any differences. So let's say I want to create an assignment where my students have to make a VoiceThread to share with me for a grade. Maybe it's a presentation that I want them to do. Maybe it's a demonstration. Could be a number of different things. But I click on that plus sign. I choose External Tool. I click on VoiceThread. It's going to load that configuration menu, the same one you've seen, except now we're going to go into the assignment builder because I want to give a grade for this. So I click on Assignment Builder, and I can see the 3 different types of assignments. All right, there's the Watch a VoiceThread assignment, the Submit a Comment assignment, and the Create a VoiceThread assignment. All 3 of these, if I create any one, it will create a gradebook column in Canvas automatically, and I'll be able to go in and grade this once it's been set up and my students have participated. So for this one, it's going to end up being a Create a VoiceThread assignment. I will get to the Submit a Comment next, but before I do, I just want to show you what the Watch a VoiceThread assignment does. This is not as popular as the other 2, but this is one that you can use as a replacement for the individual VoiceThread type. The individual VoiceThread link is one where you share a VoiceThread and there's no grade. This is one where you share a VoiceThread. You don't need any interaction from the students. It's just a lecture or an announcement, but you want to track to see who has played the VoiceThread all the way through. All right, so you could, with this one, if I click here, just be cautious with this one because it literally does check to make sure they've played the entire thing. So if you have a student that is maybe trying to do the right thing, but they skip the last 10 seconds of your last comment, they're going to show up as not having seen the whole thing. So just be cautious of that, because this is a pretty strict measure. So let's say I have a lecture. I can click on it in my link here. I can give this title a name, call it lesson 1, put in my instructions to emphasize, students, you really have to play every comment all the way through, otherwise you can't submit this. And then I click create assignment. So it's virtually the same as an individual VoiceThread link, except you'll be able to go back in and see who has completed it and give them a grade that will go right into the Canvas gradebook. All right, but for this link, I want this to be a student presentation or demonstration. So I'm not going to choose that one. I'm going to choose the create a VoiceThread assignment, because I want my students to create a VoiceThread. So I click on this link. This is the easiest one to set up. I just need to give it a name. So I'm going to call this, student demos. I can put my instructions in here and say, I want you to get a partner and demonstrate the Heimlich maneuver as part of your nursing class, or I want you to go outside and find me a deciduous tree as part of your ecology class, or whatever it is. Have your students create the VoiceThread. You put your instructions in there and you click create assignment. Then you can go to save and continue, add item, and that puts it right into your module. All right, so I'm going to show you the other type right after this, but I want to show you a few examples first. So a student can obviously create something just like you did with a PowerPoint, right? You tell them, make a PowerPoint, 10 slides, export as a PDF, upload it to VoiceThread, record your comments via webcam, and don't forget to cite the text, or whatever your instructions might be. So from a technical standpoint, your lecture and their presentation's the same thing. There are other options though. The students can demonstrate something. This could be a classical guitar student, or it could be a student doing some type of a phys ed activity or stretch or something like that. In this case, it happens to be a nurse practitioner student doing a head-to-toe exam.
My name is Shantae, and I'm a nurse practitioner student at Maryville University. Today, I will be performing my head-to-toe assessment on my volunteer Deja. Before coming in, she emptied her bladder. She was offered a gown. Her height and weight were measured. A full set of vital signs were taken. We did her near and far vision testing with both the Rosenbaum and Snellen chart. I watched her gait while she walked in, and everything was normal. And I washed my hands before entering the room. Okay, so we're going to start with the head and face and inspect.
Okay, so I can pause this video as the instructor and start to give feedback at any point along the timeline. So let's say I click on the plus sign and I say, all right, just make sure you have gloves on, right? Whatever types of feedback I might have to give. I'm obviously not a nurse practitioner, student educator, but you can see that you can stop, you can pause, you can record your comments all along the timeline and give that student really personalized one-on-one feedback if you want to. All right, here's another type of create a VoiceThread assignment. This is one where the teacher asks the students to upload a paper, and then she's going to go through it and use her Doodle tool to mark up the document and explain whatever it is she wants to explain.
Okay, you've attempted to talk about something really awesome here, okay, but you are kind of losing me because you're not introducing this particular idea. So this concept of the making concept failing to acknowledge men and women as historical beings, this is a really interesting twist in your argument.
All right, so you can see how she's going through just like she would if she were sitting next to the student in her office. Rebecca, I do see your question. Can you make individual assignment contributions private? So they're private by default. The student has the option when they're submitting it to also share it with the class. There's a checkbox right under the submit button that they can check if they want to share it with the class. Sometimes instructors want students to give like peer review, things like that. So you could do that, but that's not the default. It would be privately shared one-on-one with you by default. All right, the final type I'm going to show you, I'm going to go through assignments for this, just to show you the difference here. So if I click on assignments, I can click on the plus sign, I choose external tool. I can give it a name right now if I want to. Let's call this one quiz 5. I can always do that later as well. I set the points possible for the activity, but if you notice, I haven't selected Voicethread from anywhere yet. So if you go through assignments to do this, you need to click more options. All right, and when I click more options, I'm going to find Voicethread in my list of external tools. So I click find, I see Voicethread there, and when I select it, now it launches my configuration menu. So like I said, you could add this in through modules or assignments, but just by the nature of Canvas's features, there are some slightly different screens. So for this one, once again, I'm going to choose Assignment Builder because I want to give a grade. And this time I'm going to choose the Submit a Comment assignment. So there are really two basic types of assessments you can create using this type of link. It could be a quiz where you're asking your students a question, you have comment moderation turned on, they're all going to answer and not see each other's answers, and you can listen to them and give them a grade. Or it could be a graded discussion where you may require them to record 3 comments over the course of a week in the discussion, and then you give them a grade based on the quality of their answer. So in that model, you would not want comment moderation turned on because you want the students to see and hear each other, interact with each other, etc. So either one can be created through this one button. So I click the Submit a Comment assignment type. Like I said, I can move this around and expand it so I have some more room to work with. But let's say I see the Voicethread that I want to share, and let's pretend on this first run through it's a quiz. I click the name, I come down here, I give this a name, call it Quiz 5. I can enter my instructions, and if I asked my students 5 questions, I'm going to require them to give me 5 answers. All right, and now if the Moderate Comments box was not checked already, I can check it right here, and then click Create Assignment. The students will be able to click on the link, open the Voicethread, listen to the questions or read the questions on the slides and respond, and they won't be able to see each other. Right, but now let's roll back a second and let's pretend this is not a quiz. Let's say this is a discussion and I want to grade them on that. So I can call this Discussion 6, and maybe I want my student to record 1 comment on Monday or Tuesday as like an opening statement, and then go back starting on Wednesday and respond to 2 of their peers. So that would be a total of 3 comments. So I can set that number of comments to 3. And for this example, I would not want comment moderation turned on because I want them to see and hear each other. It's an open discussion. All right, and then I can click Create Assignment. I'm going to go Save and Continue. And then I can just save it, and that link will be all set. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is what the grading interface looks like. So in this example that I just made, obviously I have no student submissions. So I see 2 categories, those who have submitted and those who have not submitted. But for the students who have not submitted, I can send them a reminder. I can click on the Remind All Students button. I can edit this text and click Send, and the students will get an email right through their Canvas account reminding them of whatever you wanted to remind them of. All right, but now let me go into one that does actually have a student response. So I click on the link to open it up. That's all you need to do to access the grading interface. And this grading interface works in a very similar way to the way the Canvas Speed Grader works, in that I would see a list of all of my students right here in a row, and I can click on their name. It will either take me to their comments, if this is a Submit a Comment assignment, and it isolates just their comments. I can listen to what they said, give them a grade. If this is a Create a Voicethread assignment, when I click on their name, it will load their presentation or demonstration, whatever it may be, right here in this panel. So I can see a presentation here. I click on the student, it loads it. I can go through their comments, play the Voicethread. I can respond. I can give her some private feedback or just record a comment that everybody can hear if I want to. And then I can enter her grade right here, and it will go into the grade book as a % of the total points. So let's say this was a 100-point assignment. I gave her a 90. She would see 90 points out of 100 in the grade book. If this was a 50-point assignment, and I gave her a 90%, she would see 45 points out of 50 in the gradebook. So that's the way it's set up through the Canvas integration. It does all the math for you, but you can have however many points you want for that assignment. Okay, that is everything that I had planned to show. Does anybody have any other questions? I want to check in the chat here. There's another way that you can do it though, and that would be something along these lines. So this is a submit a comment assignment where the instructor wants the students to record their answers on this VoiceThread. And this happens to be about the Supreme Court, but don't worry about the content. Each one of these slides has a category, and the students have to do some research, find a Supreme Court case that fits the category, and then record their answers. So if you created something like this where you had one question per slide, as opposed to having it on a PDF, you turn on comment moderation, they can record their responses to each one of these slides. The other way to do it is like this instructor, where instead of, she doesn't even have slides, she literally just asks the question. So this is for a language class, so she wants to hear her students, right? She wants to be able to, evaluate whether they have listening comprehension skills, pronunciation, all of that good stuff, grammar, vocabulary. So she's literally just asking the question on her slide, and then the students are responding. So let me just play this one so you can see how it looks.
Good morning. My name is Rashada Kalu. What's your full name? What shall I call you?
All right, so this is a question for an ESL student, but this could be for any subject, right? I mean, she could, if you have any kind of written test, whatever question you would type and hand out, you could just say on a VoiceThread slide. And then you can play and the students will.
My name is Fatma Patli, and you can call me Fatma.
All right, and you can play all of the student comments. And if you use that as a submit a comment assignment, that's what those two are, right? Where the teacher has a certain number of questions they want answered. They ask the questions either on slides or as webcam recordings, and the students respond, and you can set how many comments that they need to make. So those would be a few different ways to do that.
Can we go back to the grading, showing us the grading? There was a question, what about rubrics?
Yeah, VoiceThread doesn't work with the Canvas rubric feature. So hopefully in the future it will be able to, but Canvas doesn't give our LTI access the ability to get in there to that rubric feature.
And before, last time you showed an example where someone had made multiple comments. And so, and this is really cool because in the past, when I had to grade, I had to go through like all the slides to find my students. But when you're grading, you can just click on their name. And if they have multiple comments, their name is there multiple times, right?
Yep, absolutely. So for any type of submit a comment assignment, when you click on their name, oh, sorry about that. When you click on their name, it will load a list of all of their comments right there for you. So the example that I have with the student comments, I don't think this one has any, let me just check. But if it was a situation where you wanted, students to record a comment and they were 7 or 8 comments, you would click on their name and you would just see all of their comments. They'd be isolated for you and you could just go from one comment to the next. You don't need to kind of hunt and peck around. It would just take you right to whatever slide they commented on. So that's what I mean. It works just like SpeedGrader. That's kind of what it was modeled on. You just go down the list, listen to all their answers, and give them a grade. Yes.
So one quick question about actually the screen that you're on. I have an assignment where like a recorder assignment, like the soprano recorder, and they have to submit a video of them playing their pieces. This would be an ideal sort of way of doing that rather than posting to YouTube and sending you in a URL, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you make it a, oh, go ahead.
And in other words, and if I put in a quiz, quizzes are automatically private between you and the teacher, or the student and the teacher?
It depends how you have them do it. So there's 2 ways to do it. They could do it by creating their own VoiceThread, in which case it's private by default, Or if you create a voice thread and maybe there's some sheet music or something on the slide,
right,
they would record their comments on your voice thread. So you just want to make sure that you have comment moderation turned on.
Okay.
And that'll be private.
Great.
That's a great use case, by the way. We do have a few examples of that on our blog where music teachers, but we don't have too many music examples to share. So if you ever create one that you want to share, please do reach out to us, because I would love to be able to show more music teachers how to use VoiceThread.
Well, I will say this seems like an ideal sort of way to evaluate and share information for music, I'll say.
Excellent. All right, so do we have any other questions? I know we're a little over time and some folks may have other things to do, but I'm happy to stick around.
Since there's a couple of Japanese teachers here, the automated captions are machine generated and it's only for English. It might create some gibberish there that you can then edit or ask your students to edit. As you know, text commenting in VoiceThread takes the hiragana. I don't know, does it take the kanji? Do you know, George?
Yeah, whatever, that's based on your keyboard. So if you have your keyboard set to a different language like Arabic or kanji or something like that, then it will work fine. It's not a setting in VoiceThread, it's just a matter of what your keyboard is set up for.
Okay, and then also when you're editing captions, they could type the caption in, I'm going to say this and we can find out if it's true or not. They could type the caption in hiragana or
yep.
in a language.
Yeah, whatever they want, they can do.
All right, guys, you know, I can answer some questions that come up, but as you saw and as you can see on the screen there on the bottom right, there's a little help icon, so you can always contact VoiceThread with any help requests or tech requests.
And you can always contact our support team down at the bottom underneath the help. You can contact support at any time too.
All right.
All right. Well,
thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody. You guys had some great questions. I love working with a diverse mix of folks from different disciplines. So I hope you got something out of it. And if you have questions, feel free to shoot them our way.